So when would you use list? Typically, lists are used when you have a whole bunch of related items. They all have to be related in some way. Otherwise, they cannot be on the same list. They can be on multiple different lists, that's fine, but not on same one single list. Ideally, all of the lines in a list should be short and they should all be of similar length. Okay, so this is not a very binding thing, but if you see that even if you see this one, right, this is a list. What you see on the screen right now, this is a list. And if you see all of these, they are typically of similar length. So you don't have one very long sentence and rest of them as single words, right? So it doesn't mean that you have to have all of them with the equal number of words or all of them have to be the same length, but just some similar kind of length. Language has to be parallel in all of the lists, and this definitely goes for all points within one list, but it also goes for all the lists in the content, in the text. Okay, consistent fonts, use consistent fonts. So if you look at this particular list, just one look will tell you that the point consistent fonts look slightly different. It doesn't look the same, right? At one look, it'll tell you it looks almost the same, but it looks slightly different. It looks like a shoddy, sloppy job. I did it on purpose to show you how it could look like if you have inadvertently slipped in a different font into the list. So make sure you have consistent fonts. Sometimes you can add certain keywords in bold or in underline just so a person who is skimming. What does skimming mean? Not really reading, just quickly looking through the content. So you can add emphasis by making certain words, keywords, bold for helping people who are just skimming through. Only if the points are in full complete sentence, only then you will put a full stop. Otherwise, you will not put a full stop. So here, all of my list items are not in complete sentences. Therefore, I do not put full stops. I'll discuss this in a lot more detail when we get to PowerPoint, because the theory of making lists is roughly the same. So we'll talk about this when we get to PowerPoint. Okay. Now, again, I've discussed this briefly the other day, but we'll talk about more of it today. Bullets or numbering. You use bullets when there is no order, it's neutral. And when there are more of the list items and there is limited scope for making a specific reference. You can maybe tell the audience, I can tell all of you, look at the third point on the left. I can tell that, right? But if I have bullets and if I say, look at the eighth point, then you are going to have trouble, because then you are going to start counting what is the eighth point, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? Instead, if I have numbers, then that allows for more specific reference. If I have numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and I say look at point number 8, then you are able to look at it more easily. If I have A, B, C, D, E, and if I say look at point E, you are able to look at it more specifically. So it allows more specific reference. I have mentioned this before. If you are using Roman numerals, no more than 5 or 6 items, and generally use numbering where there is some sort of sequence or some sort of an order implied in it. Okay, so let's quickly move to Word. Quickly move to Word. So how do I make these lists come up? I can do it by having the list on the top, this list button. So this prepares me for having some sort of a text. So I can say A. Every time I hit enter, it will put in a new one. It doesn't know how many I'm going to add, right? So every time I enter, it's going to put a new one. Now it's over. I don't have any more list items. So what? I'm going to just hit enter once again. If I hit enter twice, Word knows that my list entry is over. No more list items to enter for me. Okay, clear? Right? Now you can go ahead and make other changes here. You can go ahead and make other kinds of changes. What kind of changes? I've shown you some of these. Now you can make changes to, you say, I don't want this, I want this kind of a bullet. Just aesthetic choices. There are no right or wrongs here, just aesthetic choices. You're talking about items that have been done. You're trying to talk about important things, right? Just don't go very overboard and have something very wild, but you can do whatever else you want to do. So you can have something like this. That's possible, right? Points to look at. Okay, so whatever you want with it, you can go ahead and do that over there. You can also have numbers. Numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 with a dot, 1, 2, 3, 4 with a bracket, and so on. I can set a new format. Okay, what is the number format? I can have it with a dot, I can have it with dash, right? I can do whatever I want, whatever crazy thing that I decide to do. I can say it'll do whatever I ask it to do, right? So you can make whatever formats you want, and then you can say that this is the format that all my documents should be in. Where should it be? What should the font be? All of these things can be set from here, and I can set that as the default, and it'll open up every time I need to open this. Where do I want? I want it to be centered. That's also possible. So this is going to get centered. All of these things are possible, right? So I'm going to just default to the original. This is my default. Now, okay, so there are points and then there are subpoints, right? So all of my numbering library now got messed up. Okay, so there are points and then there are subpoints. A, under A, I want to add a few subpoints. So I say A for apple, right? How do I tell Word that this is a subpoint under 1 and it is not point number 2? So I bring the insertion point here, wherever you see it right now, and then hit the tab key. Okay, I hit the tab key. I can either hit the tab key or I can hit the indent button. So if you see here at the top, there is indent button. I can do that also. Okay, so I go to this, bring the insertion point there and hit the indent button. Okay, now the moment I hit the indent button, you see the others have reconfigured to become 2, 3, 4. So I add here another one, right? And I say B for no. Right? Come here, hit tab key. Okay, now I realize that this is too far. This is too far, and I don't want it to be that far. So I bring it closer with the ruler. Okay, I can do this every time I want to change. Say C for Canada. This is unfortunately not the default one, so I'll have to do this again. Okay. Now, I do not want this second one to appear with that small circle. I want it to appear with a small numeral, right? So let's say, how do we do that? How do we do something of that sort? Find a new numbering level. So here, if you see, how are the level changing? First is number, second is a white circle, third is a small black square, and so on. I can go ahead and define a new numbering level. And if I go ahead and define a new numbering format, I can go ahead and change that entirely. Okay, I can go ahead and make whatever changes I want to that in that particular format. So I can even set a numbering value. I can say that from here onwards, it has to start a new list. So this one onwards, I can start a new list. So I can say set numbering value, set it to 1. So it's again a new list. I can go ahead with this one, which will give me a completely different kind of numbering style. Maybe this is what is my better one. Okay, a multi-level kind of numbering. So it's easier to say, look at 2B, look at point number 2B. So specific referencing is possible. If I say what is point number 2B, you will say point number 2B is Bombay. Okay, so these kind of specific referencings are possible. Okay, if you have a text, if you directly have a text, right? So I have my random text. Okay, now suppose in this random text, each one of these paragraphs is a new bullet point. Each paragraph is a new bullet point. So I can select this and I can press this. Okay, or I can select this and I can press Control Shift and L. L stands for list. So remember, L stands for list. Control Shift L will apply the default bullet point style to this particular text. What is the default bullet point style? The default bullet point style is the first one. Now you can add other things also. Suppose you say this, and you say this is a second point. This is the third point, right? Now, suppose you've by mistake made this a subpoint. Okay, you've by mistake made this a subpoint, but you want this to be a major point. So what do? Bring your insertion point here and indent it out, right? Indent it out. So it was indented in earlier, now you can indent it out, okay? You indent it in with the tab key, you indent it out with Shift plus tab key, okay? Suppose it was indented in, you can use indent out button here, or you can use Shift plus tab. So if you bring it here, out, now tab key will put it in. This is already in. This is now in with tab, Shift out, it will be out. Okay, clear? All right, do you understand? So that's how we work with the list items. Okay, there's a question here from I missed the question. Okay, there's a question here from Sanya. You know, those of you who are asking for the attendance link again, I don't understand what stops you from just scrolling up and finding the link. I mean, you don't really need someone else to post the link again and again. I mean, I'm just scrolling. I can see the link being posted multiple times, right? 2-3 times I can see it. I don't think it's needed at all. You can just scroll up. And the same thing I say for the groups also. Just scroll up, read the solutions, read the suggestions. You know, they are all posted, and then you can just find your answer from there. All right, so there's a question here from Sanya asking, can you use the indent button for paragraph? Yes, you can. You can use the indent button for paragraphs. Okay, so this is about using list. This is what is the use of list. So only thing to do about list is there's not much to learn here in terms of features, but what you really need to know is when to use list, when not to use list, and when you are using list, when to use a numbered list and when to use a bulleted list. Now remember, typically speaking, lists always look nice with paragraphs. Okay, so a report, if you are submitting a report that only has lists, it looks like a draft work in progress. But if you have a paragraph and then if you have important points in a list, then that looks like a professionally nicely done job. Okay, so make sure you have lists in combination with a paragraph. We'll move on to tables. Now, tables are a very vexing issue for a lot of people, but tables are quite simple in Microsoft Word. So how do you insert? How do you create a new table? So the easiest way to create a new table is go to Insert and go to the Table button. And once you click the new little arrow under that, there's a grid. What does this grid mean? This grid just lets you create a table. So here, one box is selected, means it's a 1-into-1 table. 4 are selected, 2-into-2, 2 rows, 2 columns. So you see, you can quickly adjust how much. So I want a 3 into 2, right? So I say 3 into 2. So it's always column into row. 3 column, 2 rows. So that's fine. I can always anyway add more number of rows later. So if you make a mistake here, that's not the end of the world. So don't worry about that. So I'll just select a 2 into 2 first. So I'll say this is name and this is number. Okay. How do I move between them? I move between them with tab. Now my cursor is here. From here, I want to move to the next cell. Okay, I move. If I hit tab yet and again, then it's going to create a new row. Okay, so it's very easy to create as many rows as we need it to create. So I'll have A, and how do I move within a cell? I move within a cell with enter key. How do I move between a cells? I move between a cell with arrow keys. A, B, C, D, E. Okay, arrow, top arrow. Okay, 11, 14, 15, 21, 15. All right, so this gives me a basic table to work on. Now, if you see, I can have a whole bunch of styles for the table. So I select the table and I click this little arrow. So you see there are grid tables, there are list tables and all sorts of things. What is the difference between grid and list? Grid will have every cell as a separate line. The other one will not. So I can have different ones. I say I like this. Every cell has its own line. Some of the lines may not be visible because they are turned white, but they are there. They exist. Okay. I don't really like this, so I'm going to change it into this. Okay. Or I can make this smaller so it looks nicer because it's a very small one. Okay. So I can basically do whatever I want with it. There's another way to do this kind of a thing. So I remove this table, delete table. Suppose I have the same thing as text, name and number, right? And they are divided or they are separated either by tab or by comma. So they can be separated by tab or they can be separated by comma as well. But they have to be consistent. Whatever is the separation, that has to be consistent. Okay. So now what is the separation? The separation is comma, or it can be tab also. So I click this and then I go to insert. There is table. I go to that table. Under insert, there is something called convert text to table. So I go there and it has automatically said number of columns are 2, number of rows are 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. What is the text separator? It is comma, right? It is comma. So now, where would this not work? Where would this not work, right? Suppose you say, suppose your things are like this. Okay. Now, imagine New Delhi, comma India has to appear in one single cell. Now, this is not going to work, right? This is not going to work for you now. Now, let's just see what happens. Okay. Now, you want only 2 different columns because it's country and number. You see what's happened? The whole thing got spoiled. Country, number, New Delhi, India. Because it's a comma there, it has split over there also. Not exactly what we wanted, split completely at random. So it doesn't work for these kind of things. It is supposed to only have, I mean, you can use comma separated when there is no other one. Otherwise, you will have to have a tab separator. So if you have a tab separator, then this is going to work just fine. So you have tab, here also you have a tab, here also you have a tab, Here you have a tab. Right? Now take a look. So tabs, uh, columns would be 2 and rows would be 8. Let's see why it's taking. Okay, so country and number, there are too many tabs, so it's gone into a next one. But otherwise, you see broadly it works. Okay, you can have other kinds of separators. You can have what is called a tilde separator. So you can have this character as a separator character. That's also possible. Anything but not a comma. So if you have anything but that's not a comma, then that is going to work over here. So you can go there, click convert text to table. Now I have other character. What is the other character? I have this one. So that also helps me make that table. Okay. So now this table, I have a bunch of predefined things that I can do. There is a header row, which I can have a separate one. There's a banded row that I will see. Right. So this will change all of the options. So here, if you see, all of these are banded rows. So which means rows, alternate rows are highlighted. Why is this? This is needed so it's easier to read horizontally. I don't want to see banded rows, then I will not see the banded rows. I want to see the banded columns, so I can see columns being banded. Okay, so one column being highlighted. It just depends on what kind of data. Suppose my data doesn't have a header, then I do not see styles with a separate header. Right? It just entirely depends on what kind of data that I have over here. Right? So now, suppose I have header here, and I want to only select the header line. So there are different ways of doing. I can bring my mouse here, and I can do Control Shift and right arrow to select this, and to select the next one also. Okay, so I do this and I say bold, or I can select it by simply bringing the mouse here to the left, and that will also give me the same kind of thing. All right, suppose now I want to have another column added. I want to have another column added. So I bring my mouse to just the top of where I want the column. Okay, now the mouse has changed into a downward pointing arrow. Downward pointing arrow. So I say right click. So downward pointing arrow, there is an insert. So I say insert. So it will say insert left or insert right. Now insert left will put a new column between country and number, and insert right will mean country, number, then new column. So I will enter insert right. So this is my new column. I can do the same way for a new row. Now new row is relatively easy if I were to add rows at the end. So I bring the mouse here, and you see I'm just hitting tab key. New rows are getting added. So this is very easy. But suppose I want to add a new row between New Delhi and this first and the second one. Then I select this, again go to insert, under that, insert where? Insert above or insert below. So Ontario, Canada line, that second row is the baseline row. So do I want to insert above it or do I want to insert below it? Now let's insert above. So now it will be Mumbai, India. Okay, so inserting a row depends on where you are inserting the row. Depending on that, it will change. So you can have n number of these rows and columns, doesn't really matter. You can adjust the size with the help of mouse. You can adjust the size with the help of mouse. Now, there will be certain problems when you do this kind of thing. Sometimes you may want a particular header to be merged, right? Because they're showing something, they're showing a title. So you can select this and you can simply say merge the header, merge the cells. So now it is one. Suppose now you want this to be centered. That's also possible. So now, even though they are three different cells, they are behaving just like one particular cell. Okay. Now suppose you want to do the reverse for this particular cell. So here it is 1, but you want this to have 2 different values. So you can split this into 2. That's also possible. right? It's possible to do it only for one and not do it for any of the others. If you want to select the entire table and make everything centered, click this plus sign, it will select everything and go ahead, the table itself gets centered. If you want to make all of the text centered, click this and click center for all of the text. Should center align. Right. So all of this should center align. Okay. Entire thing will center. Okay, so you can do all of these kind of things. Now suppose you decide that this split is no longer needed, so you can go ahead and delete this particular cell and it will no longer be split, or you can merge these two cells to remove the split. Now when it's removed the split, it doesn't know how to handle the two different values. So it will have both of those values and you will have to see what you want to do with that one. Okay. Now, there are a few vexing issues with Word, okay, with table. Typically, the issue arises, suppose the table is at the bottom of the page. Suppose the table is at the absolute bottom of the page. Then you have a problem that this table will get split into two pages. Are you okay with it? Are you not okay with it? Sometimes the table will get split and only one row will appear in the next page. I'm sure many of you would have come across this kind of situation. It's very, very annoying. So you can prevent that or you can allow that. Suppose you have the table split half here, half there, then you can allow it. Suppose it's only one row, then you can prevent it. Either way, you can do all of that by you going into the table properties. You can go all of that by table properties. So you go to layout and you go to properties, right? It will say allow row to break across pages. When you allow this, then this particular row can break across the page. But if you allow the row to break across the page, then you can also repeat the header row. Right now it's disabled because there's not enough data. But if you have enough data, then this will also be enabled. So when you allow the table to break across pages, then it is always a good idea to have the header repeated so that the next page does not just simply look like some table of numbers. It actually looks like there are the headers. So if there is a header here, that header will get repeated in the next page also. Okay, so whenever you are allowing it to do it in the move to the next page, then you go ahead and allow the header to be repeated. Okay. Okay, a couple of things. Now you can customize individual things. Suppose you say here, if you say here, now this one, okay, suppose it's come like this. Now you see, this looks a little awkward. This looks a little awkward. So there are different things you can do. One is you can make this, instead of top align, you can align it in the middle. Now it looks a little better. It's not aligned right at the top. It's aligned in the middle of the cell when you are seeing it vertically. That's one way to do. The other way to do is to expand this entire column to allow the longer names. Right? So you allow the longer names. Again, this is something that we will learn much better in Excel when we are doing, because see, if you look at it, this grid is nothing but just like Excel. So the properties are very similar. So we will learn this kind of thing in Excel, but I'm just doing this for Word, whatever pertains to Word. Now this is okay, but if you see now, this column and this third column, both were equal earlier. Now they are no longer equal, right? So now how can you do them equal? You can go ahead and move this a little more, but now they have become very unequal. You can come back and do this. Maybe equal, may not be equal. So now if you see, this kind of manual adjustment is a very cumbersome thing to do. How can you be sure that they are equal? You can be sure that they are equal by selecting all of them and saying distribute columns. Once you've distributed the columns, then what Word has done is it has taken this entire space and made two exactly half columns. So if you see now, they are completely equal. I'll make them unequal and I will show you once again. I select them. I don't have to do the guesswork of how equal it is and things like that. Do this, click distribute columns. All of them have become equal. Suppose I do not do this and I had as they were earlier, right? I select all of them and I do the reverse, say distribute rows. Now all of the rows are equal size. This will also look okay if I change the text direction to middle. So you see, both of these things are now looking okay. So this looks like more space. So I do this. This is one way to handle the long names, or the other way to handle long name is by increasing first column and distributing the other two column. Are you able to follow this? Right? Okay. So now the question, another question that arises is, how close can this text be to this margin of the cell? How close can the text be to the margin of the cell? That is given by something called cell margin. Okay, so default cell margin, top can be very close, 0, but left and right are 0.19 centimeters. So I can reduce this. So now the cells can be very, very close. The text can be very close to the cell. Okay, I'm not saying it looks good or anything, but if you see, n here is very close. N here is now able to get very close. How close? 0.05 centimeter close. That's how close it can actually get when you are printing it. Okay, so you will have to again take a call on how it is and whether that's useful for you, whether that's not useful for you, and things like that. Suppose you have something like this. Right? And assume I have a lot of information, lot of data. So I want this like really compressed. Okay, I can change the text direction. All of these, I can change the text direction. Okay, now if you see, I can make this column very, very small. So I'm able to save on a lot of space. So this kind of text direction does not work for everything. It works for text what people are familiar with. January, February, March, April, very familiar. Okay, but if you have text that people need to read, see, January, February, March, April, nobody really needs to read. So the moment you say J and some ARY, you know it's January, February, March, April, right? You know it's January, February, then you automatically know it's March, April. You are not even subconsciously reading it. You already know. So this does not need to have anything. But if you have some particular person's name, right, then this is going to be a bit of a pain. Then this is going to be a bit of a pain because it's not very easy to read in that kind of direction. So again, while this feature is available, you have to use your own discretion to know when to use this and when not to use this, right? Just because it's there does not mean you have to use them always, but they are there because there are certain situations, there are certain cases where you can use this kind of a design. Okay. Now suppose you want to highlight this cell and this cell as maybe something which is really good or whatever. So you go to table design, right? And let's say you want this to be highlighted in red color or in green color. So you change the pen color to green. Okay. You can do this manually. That's one way to do. Or you can go to borders, right? You can say what are the borders that you are choosing. You are choosing outside borders. So these two, you can choose outside borders and that becomes green. So what kind of border are you going to put? You can select that over here by highlighting the border. Otherwise, it's of no use. So you select this highlighting and you say outside border. So now if you see, emphasis is called, I mean, I've probably added a bit too much of emphasis with 3-point border, but you get the idea. You can customize this one and say that, hey, look here, this is the time when we've achieved the highest value. So April has been our best performing month, and February we have no data, and maybe February has not really been all that nice in terms of value. So you say we do not have data for the month of February. Right? So one single table can have as many borders as you want. Suppose you just want this line alone to be something. Assume you want that, then you can go ahead and paint that manually. So go to border painter, just manually touch that. So this is good when you want to do some single ones. I don't really know why you would want to do that, but if you want to do that. Now, suppose here you want this line removed. Ideally, it shouldn't be removed because even though it's highlighted, they are still two different cells. But suppose, assume for a moment that you want this line removed, so you can go ahead to border painter, turn this white. Okay, this still does not have the effect of merging the table. This has just made the table look white. The border of that table look white. All right. Okay, what else? See a couple of questions. Okay, so there are a few other things that you can do. You can align. So if you want to align the table nicely, you can then view all of the grid lines first, and then you can align the table. That's one way to do it if you're trying to do it properly. Achha, you can set the height and width of the table by centimeter if you are sure of how much do you want it to be. But anytime you are using centimeter in Word, make sure your page layouts are set correctly. Okay, layout has to be set correctly. Paper size has to be set correctly. Your paper size has to be A4, and only then you can use centimeter. So here, for a paper size A4 alone, this will work. Height 2 centimeter and width is 5.89. So you can do that. Now again, remember, just to quickly give you a recap, how do I make these two columns equal? So I select them and I say distribute columns becomes equal, right? Now, if you see, interestingly, I have selected only this far. So only those many columns got distributed. The others did not get distributed. So I can just go ahead and delete all of these. So it says delete rows. Okay, go ahead and delete. Now, suppose I want to delete this particular column itself. So I come here and click delete cells, right? Now, what cell should I delete? So I can delete the entire row, that will delete the entire February, or I can delete the entire column. I can also shift cells left or shift cells up. So if I only delete this one cell, right, then what can happen? March column 2 can come up, April column 2 can come up to March, and so on. Or assuming there are other columns to the side, then the columns could move to the left. That's one way to do it. Or I can do the entire column. Again, this shifting left, shifting up is something that if you're not able to follow right now, please do not worry. We will cover this in Microsoft Excel, and that's when it will be very clear to you. Okay, so for now you can delete the entire column or the entire row. Let's delete the entire column. It's gone. Okay, interestingly, this has also taken the header away. Why did it take the header away? Because it's a merge cell. It doesn't know what to do. So what should I do with it? I have to split this first, or I can just remove the merging. So either of the two things. If I split this first and if I remove that, then it is not going to take that entirely away. Clear? Okay. So what else? Questions? What else? Just looking at the question. Okay. Another important thing is, suppose you have a very long table, right? Very long table. Then imagine the person has scrolled at the bottom. Okay. Now these are practical problems all of you would have come across. When you scroll down to the bottom, and then you will find all of a sudden one column you can no longer forget, no longer remember or find what the column was at the top, right? Do you realize that? So what can you do in such a situation? In such a situation, you can just say over here, you can just repeat the header row in between, right? So when you repeat the header row, of course, this is not that big, but if you repeat the header row somewhere, then this header row will again get repeated. So in general, if you have one full A4 page worth of columns, then it is a good idea to repeat it once in the middle of the page. So top half has its own header row, bottom half has its own header row. You don't really have to go anywhere else to look for it. Okay. You can directly select anything in this table through the select button. Select a particular cell, only the cell where my insertion point is will get selected. The entire column where my insertion point can get selected. Here my insertion point was here. So the entire column means all of the table itself got selected. Entire row can be selected or entire table can be selected. So sorry, I think the screen was paused. Okay, I was just showing you from this select. So you can choose what needs to be selected. So my insertion point is here right now. So from here, I can select a particular cell, or I can select the entire column, or I can select the entire row, or I can select the entire table. Okay, if I want to remove one particular thing, I can just erase that particular item. That's possible, right? I can just erase one by one things. This doesn't erase the content, this only erases the lines. All right, this only erases what the lines are, and it'll have the effect of merging cells in a sense. All right, questions? Let's go to questions. Okay, so okay, so let me just take a look. I'm just trying to find till where I have done. Okay, I think roughly from here. Okay, Namrata is asking, can we do the reverse to table to text? Yes, that's also possible. We can do the reverse. So here, if I select the entire table, then I can go to layout, and there is a convert to text. So I can convert it with paragraph marks, and I can convert nested tables. So if there are smaller tables within a particular cell, that will also get converted. So now you see the thing is all converted to paragraph marks. So what is my separator now? Separator is enter. Okay, so I can come back and I can say that convert to text, but convert with comma. So now you see they have all separated with comma. So the blank cells, it is handling differently, but it is possible to do that. Shushanto is asking, can I break a cell into several columns only? Yes, you can. I think I already showed that. So you can go there and you can split a cell into as many columns as you want to split it into. That's possible. Can you change spacing of the table cells? Yes, you can change. I don't know what you mean by spacing, because all of this is spacing. So you can change spacing. So you see all of this, what I'm doing is changing the spacing of the cells. Dr. Bhagya is asking for table, what is good, left, right, or center, then spacing, and we have to stretch table to side or be it in middle. Now it really depends on what you are doing. So by and large, I don't think it's a good idea to have a lot of empty space on the table. So you don't fill a table to the entire page width, which you can do very easily, by the way, by using autofit. So you can do autofit to entire window. So that expands the table to use your entire page. But if you have only very little, so suppose here it's only 12, it doesn't look nice. It's better to have a smaller table. And later when we are doing graphs, then I'll also show you, if you have a smaller table, I'll show you how to bring text right next to it. Okay, so you can bring text over here in this space. I'll show it to you for pictures, but the same rule will apply for table also. Then it does not look like space is wasted. It'll look nice as a table. Can I put a box within a text in a table? Um, you mean like a border? You mean like a border of it? Should be possible. That should be possible. So you can have a border of the thing. That's possible. But I don't really see why you would do that. Also, you can insert a shape within a table. All of that is possible. There is nothing preventing you from doing it. But again, possible to do doesn't really mean that you should be doing. Okay, you can do all of these kind of things. You can also write the text within this box alone. There's a question from Om. If you want to continue the table from next page, so can we copy the same format and cells? Yes, you can. You can copy the text from a table from one page to another page, and then you can go ahead and do that. Anu is asking how to have constant header as I scroll through data. You can't do that here. You can do that on Excel. You can't do that here because Word, remember, is predominantly a writing application. It's not a data handling application. It can do data handling to an extent, but that's not its primary job, right? Can you do this? Can you make the header consistent on a piece of paper? You can't, right? If you cannot do header consistent on a piece of paper, you cannot do it on Word. So when you are scrolling on Word, the effect is actually that of turning the pages. Right? Imagine, can you put the header right at the top as you turn pages? If you cannot do it on paper, you will not be able to do on Word either, because that is what is the job of Word. Evenly distribute column. I have shown you how to do evenly distribute column. Insert table is with Control T. Again, Madhumita, you cannot have a constant header as you scroll through data. You can do that in Excel. You cannot do that over here. When we do Excel, I'll show you that. Okay, so Anu is asking how to insert text on top of the table when the table is present at the beginning of the page. So that's very simple. You just bring the cursor to the right of the table and just hit enter so that it comes down a little bit, and then after that you can go ahead and add text. Okay, there are a variety of ways in which you can do that, and you can just push the table a little bit and you can add text over here. You can say table 1, right? So this table was right at the top and I have pushed it a little bit at the bottom, and then I can add the text over here. Can we insert bullets in tables if needed? Yes, you can. So you can do that. That's possible. Right? You can do that. Okay. What else? Do that. You can split cells over here, right? And you can say, so there's a question from Dr. Alka asking, how do you split the row? Okay, so I'm just showing that. So you can split this the other way also. So this row, I mean, Dr. Alka, correct me if I'm getting your question right or wrong. So, but you can split it this way also. Earlier we split it by column, now we are splitting by row. That's also possible. Reena Gupta is asking what autofit means. Autofit simply means that it will use whatever is the best possible fit. So you can say that autofit to content. Okay, so it is going to fit everything to the biggest content. So if you increase the content, you see the cell size is changing. So that is auto-fitting to content. So whatever is the longest content, or you can auto-fit it to the window. So that means the entire page is going to be used. So depending on how you want it, or you can just have a fixed width. Fixed width means no matter how much the content changes, you see the cell is not going to change. So the width is always fixed. It's not going to change at all. So each of these things are possible. Okay. How can we fix the table without splitting to another page? Typically you cannot do that. So if your text is that big that it has to split to another page, it will split to another page. So you can then do that by maybe making adjustments in terms of reducing the font size or reducing this text or wrapping the text around or something of that sort. But otherwise you cannot. If it has to split, it will split. How to insert table to a text already written, that's also the same way. So if I already have some sort of text, right? I have some text. Now I want a table over here. That's possible. So I can go ahead and do this. And I can say that insert a new table over here, right? I can just add a table in whatever fashion. That's all. Ashish Kumar is asking how to remove a split cell. I think I already covered. So you can go back and you can merge the cell again. You can go back and again you can merge the cell, and then that split cell will get removed off. How can I put text just above or below a text without much spacing? There's a question from Sushanta that I'm reading out. So see, that's a very subjective kind of question. Without much spacing means what, right? But in general, you can do that just like how all of the other things are. You can just put the text over here and you can just go ahead and use your paragraph properties, and you can just change how much of spaces that you want before and after, and you can get the text very close to the table. So there is no other real way to do this. You can only do it this way to the extent that you are satisfied with. How to write in that blue box in the table? So you select the blue box, right click, add text. Okay, the blue box is a shape. It's a shape, so you can write within the shape. Okay. About the shapes, I will give you a very small tip before we end. So you can go to insert, shapes. Now you see, there are rectangles, but there is no square, right? There's a rectangle, but there's no square. There's an oval, but there's no circle, right? So if you see, oval can be this, right? Or oval can be anything. So if you see, circle is actually a special form of oval. A square is actually a special form of rectangle. So how do you make sure that this circle is proper circle? Is this an egg or is this a circle? It's an egg. Is this a circle? I don't know. So how can I be absolutely sure that a circle is a circle? I can do that by holding the shift key when I'm pressing the circle. So I'm pressing the shift key right now. Now it will only be a circle. No matter what I do, when I'm inserting, at least I left the shift key, but as long as I'm pulling it, it will no longer change to any other shape. Same thing goes for rectangle. If I'm holding the shift key, it will only become a square. Okay, so that's the reason I've heard people ask, and it's a brilliant question for those people who ask, because there's a rectangle but there's no square, there's a circle but there's an oval but there's no circle, and this is the reason why those two are not there. Prakash is asking how to make rows in equal height if they are in different size. Prakash, I already covered that. So you just select all of the rows, right? And you go ahead and distribute them. That's all. So now the rows are all of equal height. Distribute rows. If we don't want to print table, only text we want in the table format, how can we do that? Okay, so the way to do that essentially is this, that you have the, I mean, all you want is you want the text appearing in that way. So you have this and go to the table design and have pen color as white and you select all borders. So that's all. The table doesn't get printed. It's only the text in the table format.